Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and today we're going to be diving straight into Prophecy. With the new patch, we saw Prophecies completely revamped, anywhere between acquiring them to kind of activating them and using them in maps. And they've really risen in power level significantly, so much so to the level of Sextants. And what I mean by that is, I wouldn't be caught dead in a tier 16 map with at least a few really good prophecies activated, because they're just such an important part of sustaining your tier 16 map pool or acquiring more currency. They're pretty easy to get as well, and they're very cheap, and you can buy them in bulk on a website like PoE app or just a few chaos each. But we're not going to be talking about the acquisition of prophecies in this video. We're going to be talking about the best ones for map sustain, specifically tier 16 maps. We want to be getting as many maps as we can back in the most cost-effective way. And we might get a few other bonus effects in there as well. So to begin with, I just kind of want to explain prophecies in the current state of the game. So at the moment, the way they work is you could have prophecies active, up to 7 of them at once, and you want to have as many active as you can. And the reason for this is, when you activate a tier 16 or any map in general, it'll roll and it'll have a chance to activate any of your map-specific prophecies. It'll go around and try all of them, and the more you have active, the more chances you have to activate one of them. So let's say you have all 7 slots filled up and kind of ready to go, you have a very high chance at activating one of those prophecies and having basically an extra sextant, or even in some cases a super sextant kind of effect on your maps. So have 7 of them if you can, or whatever you find comfortable, and try and keep all of them up as much as possible. So when one activates, try and replace it if you can, or maybe after like 2 or 3 activate, replace those, and just depends on how much micromanagement you want. But yeah, so when you get into the map, you'll either see whether a prophecy has activated or not on the right hand side of your screen. Let's say I activate this Plague of Rats prophecy on my map, it'll probably show up over here on the right hand side saying that it's activated, which is pretty good. So set 7 and just roll your maps and run them like you normally would, and when they get used, replace them as you see fit. That's all really good. Now we want to know which prophecies we're going to be using. So we'll get straight into that now, and we'll bring up the classic spreadsheet here. But before I dive too much into which ones are the best, I want to kind of quickly talk about the 2 different categories that prophecies can fall in. And those are as follows. We can have a prophecy that activates, as we talked about, when the map is generated, and we can have a maximum of 1 of those per map. The prophecies that fall into this kind of category are things like Tempest, the Master kind of prophecies, all of the additional monster kind of prophecies that we can see here. They're all prophecies that only activate when the map is created. And you're limited to 1 of these per map. So you can't have both like Crushing Squall and the Cursed Choir activated at the same time. However, there's a few prophecies in the game that kind of go around this rule and kind of work under different rule sets, and we need to kind of establish that now. And those prophecies work the following way. So let's just use Overflowing Riches for example. When this prophecy activates, it's going to drop 10 random currency orbs, and the condition is when you slay a monster. So let's just give you the example of having a full group of 6 people. All 6 of these people have this prophecy activated. When you go into this map, the prophecy won't trigger straight away, because the condition is killing a monster. So let's say we kill a monster in the map, and all 6 of these prophecies activate, because that's just how these prophecies work. It doesn't matter if it's your map, anyone else's map, if you're in the prophecy and the condition is met, it has a chance to activate. So let's say 6 players, we kill a monster, all 6 activate. And we're going to drop 60 currency items for that. And the really cool thing is about these prophecies as well is that if the condition is met multiple times and you activate multiple prophecies, so let's say you go into a map with 5 Overflowing Riches in your inventory, and after 1 activates, you activate another one, and then you can kill more monsters, and then it can activate again and again and again and again, as long as there's monsters to kill. So that's pretty broken, and these are definitely the most abusable types of prophecies in my opinion. And we'll get to these in a second. So that's kind of the 2 different categories of prophecies, and now we'll get into kind of like what they do and which one I think are the best to use and stuff like that. So to begin with, we have our unique effects. So these aren't particularly expensive prophecies, but they give you very unique and sextant-ish kind of effects. We'll start with the first one here. So bountiful traps. I've talked about this in a few videos in the past, but this one is super duper broken OP, and I'm pretty sure it's pretty impossible for it to not pay its worth back. Currently, I believe they're around 3 chaos, and what it does is it adds 8 strong boxes to your maps. So those can be Diviner strong boxes, currency strong boxes, or any of those. But not just that, it adds a truckload of monsters to the map with the boxes. So each box has around 3 packs on it, and those 3 packs times 8, what's that? That's like 24 packs of monsters. That's like the equivalent of like 2 to 3 sextants almost, in my opinion. And not only that, this also stacks with other sextant modifiers like the 500% quant one. So bountiful traps is equivalent to like 1 or 2 sextants, if not more, and you get the actual box which gives you the currency or items from it. So completely insane. If you're running without this one and you're trying to sustain maps, this is a quick fix for you. Get that in there and have a few maps proc with bountiful traps. Next up is Deadly Twins. So this one is nowhere near as powerful as bountiful traps, but it definitely does some pretty crazy stuff and combines really well with a prophecy we'll be talking in a second about, which is the Dreamer's Dream. So what Deadly Twins does is it duplicates the map boss in the map. So in PoE, map bosses have a very, very high chance to drop a golem. I believe it's about 1 in 4, which is pretty insane. Also, in addition to that, they have a chance to drop a sacrificial fragment when they're killed when the map is corrupted. What Deadly Twins does by duplicating the map boss is it doubles the chance of that, essentially. So you have twice as good chance to get a map off the map boss, and you have twice as many chances at sacrificial fragments. This is particularly powerful in maps which have 3 bosses. So you can basically get up to 6 chances at a map and up to 6 chances at sacrificial fragments. And sac frags are worth like 1 to 2 C, and the actual like maps obviously can be worth upwards of 15 to 16 C depending on which Elder map you're doing. So pretty damn insane prophecy, and it's definitely worth a spot in my opinion on your 7 kind of prophecy like loadout if you. And I always run this one because it's particularly powerful with my favorite prophecy of this league, the Dreamer's Dream. Next up we have the Twins, which functions exactly like the mirrored sextant, except you don't get reflect immunity. What this one does is it basically duplicates all the rare monsters in the map, which is extremely powerful, and it basically will double your chance at getting maps from rare monsters, which is super crazy, because rare monsters right behind the map boss have a very high chance of dropping map. Like significantly higher than blue and white mobs for like their mob by mob basis. So if you had 10 rares in the map, now you'll have 20, which is pretty damn insane, and it's definitely, again, in my opinion, worth running as long as the price is right as part of your 7 kind of prophecies. So next up, we have Tempests. So Tempests are a bit of an interesting one. They don't add monsters to the map, but what they do is they add 30% quantity to the map, and this affects map drops. If we jump back in game here, let's say we have a really well rolled map. Let's just go over here, like a 139% quant map. Like, wow, that's insane. Let's say we roll Tempest on this with the prophecy, so that'll take us up to 169 quantity on that map. So that's almost like, that's an insane amount of quantity, basically. And you have a very, very insane chance of getting tons of maps from this map itself. So it's going to give you basically a huge juice up to the amount of loot, maps, everything that drops in the map, which is really, really good and really, really imperative to sustaining your maps. So you can't run and lock in multiple Tempests as part of your 7, but you can always run at least 1. And I highly recommend it. It's easily one of the best, right up there with Bountiful Traps. And it's kind of got a stack-on effect. Let's say that you're using like Zana, all the Sextants, and some other stuff. The prophecies will just further amplify and juice up the rest of the stuff you have on the map, which is really, really important when you're trying to sustain maps like T16s. So always have at least 1 Tempest activated and ready to go as part of your 7 prophecies, and you'll be sitting pretty good. All of these all give the same amount of quantity, so you can buy any of these and have it activated, and you'll be pretty good to go. And yeah, there's no difference to any of them really. Next up, I want to talk about some of the different options you have for additional monsters. So we'll just move these down here for now. These four that I'm going to talk about up here are definitely powerful prophecies, but I'd say they're definitely a step below the plagues. So the following prophecies are like really cheap, and I'll go over quickly what they do, but basically they add a amount of mobs pretty similar to a sexton. The Cursed Choir adds Sea Witches. The Trembling Earth is definitely the worst one. It adds Devourers, which are those big underground scorpion things. The Hungering Swarm adds Bugs, like the Carrion Queens, and Soil, Worms, and Blood is Zombies. So out of the four, I'm pretty sure Soil, Worms, and Blood is the best one, but all of these are definitely a step below the following two, which is Plague of Frogs and Plague of Rats. So Plague of Rats basically adds a ton of packs of rats, which drop a lot of loot. They can be rare or blue packs, and they're really densely packed. So there's two different plagues. Plague of Frogs can only be used in outdoor maps, and Plague of Rats can only be used in indoor maps. So while these two are definitely better than the rest, I would still basically fill out that 7 lots of prophecies with the rest of the mob, or like kind of density adding prophecies. So they're really cheap as well. I think the Cursed Choir is like a fusing each, so you'd be kind of crazy not to be running at least some of these mob adding kind of prophecies to your maps. So all of those will just add more monsters, which you can never be too sad about. Let's say they add 10 or 20% more monsters to the map. It's almost as good as a Tempest. Actually, I think it's probably a little bit better than a Tempest, honestly, if you actually factor it and work it all out. But yeah, it's definitely good, and you should definitely be doing it and taking advantage of that. Next up, we have a few kind of additional drop ones. All 3 of these are extremely powerful in certain situations, and all 3 of these are not locked on a map-by-map basis. So you can have everyone in your party activating these whenever you want and whenever they trigger, and they can be activated multiple times per map. So we already talked about Overflowing Riches. It drops 10 random currency orbs, and this can drop sextants, master sextants, and all that kind of stuff. This is mainly on here because they're so abundant and basically free in the economy. They're like an alc each, if that, and the returns from them is always better than an alc. So if you're just popping them constantly and you can be bothered, they're always going to make you money. But in addition to that, they're also a byproduct of farming up Tempests and Plague prophecies, which I'll talk about in the next video. You can easily farm up massive amounts of these without having to buy them from other players, and this is also one of the kind of prophecies, or the trash prophecies, which you'll accumulate like 30, 40, 50 of in a session of just rolling prophecies. So it's a really good one if you can be bothered using it. Same with Reforged Bonds. Basically, whenever you kill a Bloodline pack, which are fairly common in maps, you'll get 5 fusing orbs straight up. It'll just drop every time you kill a Bloodline pack. So if you can be bothered to churn through these, if you have them, you can get like 20, 30, 40, even 50 fusings if you have 10 of them fairly quickly. And again, you can activate multiple per map, per person. So if you have 6 people and they all pop one, boom, 30 fusings or whatever. Which is pretty good in my opinion, and I think it is definitely pretty underrated. So the next one, in my opinion, is easily one of the most broken prophecies currently in the game for sustaining maps. Like, it's completely mind-blowing how people haven't been abusing this thing. Like, I haven't been abusing it until like a few days ago when I discovered it, but it's completely dumb. As soon as I found out about it, I bought like 100 or 200 of them, and I'm going to be using them all. So what this one does is when you kill a map boss, it has a chance to just drop another map. So this map is just the same as if the map boss dropped a map, so it uses the level of the zone, which is very important, meaning a lot of the time, I'd say like 80% of the time, it's a red map, and a lot of the time it's a T16 map, which is insane, because this prophecy is like 2C, and I bought like 70 of them off one guy. So you're going to get a red map most of the time, and you're going to get a T16 a lot of the time, and it's really is a lot of the time. I've gotten tons and tons of T16s from this, and the really crazy thing about this is that it's not locked to once per map. So, and it's not like to once per person either. Let's say you got 3 guys in your party, right? And you're doing a map like City Square. What you can do is have all 3 guys pop the prophecy. When you get to the boss, kill the first boss, and let's say 2 of them proc. So 2 maps drop. Boom. Okay, 2 maps in there. Then you can get those 2 guys to pop another 2 prophecies, and then kill the next boss. And it has another chance to pop all 3 of the prophecies, and like let's say another 2. And then kill the last boss, another chance. So you have a massive amount of opportunity to get just tons of maps off this thing, which is completely insane. And if you're playing with multiple players, you get so many maps. It's really crazy. We did a bit of a test, and it's about a 1 in 7 chance to get a T16 from a little test we did. It wasn't a very big sample size, but yeah, that's what we did. We were doing it on City Square with multiple people, and we accumulated a just disgusting amount of T16s off this prophecy. So I always feel naked if I'm not wearing this prophecy in my tab when I'm doing T16s now. It feels like I didn't sextant the map, so I always have this thing on, and I could not recommend this enough. If you're running T16s, you need to be using this prophecy as one of your prophecies. And it's really, really good on, obviously, maps with multiple bosses as well. It gives you 3 times the amount of chance to proc it, and potentially even making it twice a map or whatever. So really, really insane. Next up, you should be running at least a master prophecy, in my opinion, in T16s. At least one of them. Doesn't matter which one of them, whichever one you find most fun or find is most lucrative. In my opinion, Alva is not worth it at the current price. It is completely insane how much it is. It's about 15 chaos, and I do not feel like that's worth it. Ooh, I'm getting haunted by ghosts. Yeah, so not worth it in my opinion, but if you have them, sure, go for it, run them. Next up is Zana, Einhar, and Nico. So all 3 of these, in my opinion, are worth it, depending on your situation. So Zana is definitely worth it every single time. It's really, really cheap. She's worth 2C per prophecy, I believe. And when you activate it, you basically get a free T16 map to run, but the rolls are going to be kind of suboptimal. So you can blow through that, and maybe you'll get a few maps back, maybe you won't, but it's going to cost you time. That's the main thing. You could be doing other things. So you'll probably get the most value out of Zana, but it's going to cost you like twice the time when you proc it in a map. Is that worth it? I don't like it. I would never run Zana, just purely because I think I'm going to be able to make more money running my own maps. Next up is Einhar. I think this is the best one if you don't plan on micromanaging your delve, and delve is similar to Zana. You kind of have to spend your time in there, and it's going to like double the amount of time you spend like on the maps and stuff like that. So probably the best one to do is Einhar. The reason for this is it adds a ton of rare monsters. Like, we're talking about 7 to 8 rare monsters, 6 of them being yellow beasts, and the other 1 being a red beast. And with those beasts comes generally a pack of monsters, which is kind of like a weird pack of monsters, but it's a pack. That pack can drop a map, and the red beast or the normal beast can drop tons of maps as well. I've had multiple maps drop from them, and it's pretty good. In addition to that, you also get the benefit of having red beasts in your maps, and those can be worth 50 plus C for fairly common ones like the crafting ones, and they sell pretty well on the marketplace, which is pretty good. You're never going to lose money on Einhar, and you can buy tons of him, and there's a really easy way to farm the Einhar prophecies yourself as well, which I'll teach you guys in the next video. But yeah, Einhar's a sure bet. It does slow down your mapping a little bit because you have to wait for Einhar to capture the beasts to see if there's loot in them, but it's only by a few seconds, and I think the amount of monsters that it adds are definitely worth it. And right now, Einhar prophecies are only 2C each, which is complete insanity in my opinion. The next up is Nico. Nico is pretty good in my opinion. It gives you sulfite to delve, but only if your delve is in a position already where you can get T16 maps from it. If your mineshaft is not in that position, Nico is obviously not very good at all, and I would not recommend him. And in my opinion, if you want to farm delve, it's just better to go with the sulfite scarabs over the prophecy, because the prophecy is just going to be, it's like drawn out so much, you don't know when you're going to get it, and you kind of like have to move around a lot between delving, and it's not as optimal in my opinion. So yeah, I think the best one is definitely Einhar, with a close second being Zana, and then if you like delving, you can go with Nico. At the current prices, Alva, in my opinion, is not worth it. So you can only have one master at one time in your maps, but you want to pick one of these and just stick to it. So next up, these prophecies aren't ones you're going to be wanting to use on a often basis. I just put them in here because you can have whole Atlas strategies around them. And those are Monstrous Treasure and Vol Winds. So depending on when you're watching this video, if it's next league or if it's like the league start, these will have varying different kind of success and like prices and all that kind of stuff associated with them. So Vol Winds is really good, pretty much all league. It depends on the price of them. They're really, really cheap early on. But activating this prophecy is insane. It's going to give you a ton of corrupted items, which is going to be 6 links, 6 sockets, all that kind of stuff. If you want to see that in action, go check out my other videos, but it's really, really good. Next up is Monstrous Treasure. I've obviously got a lot of videos on this. A lot of people have been talking about it recently. The one thing I wanted to say about this one is that at the start of the league, this thing's like 10 or 20 C, so you can definitely focus on this as a map strategy and really play around it. In kind of my closing thoughts here though, I did mention that the Deadly Twins and the Dreamer's Dream is really good together because on a triple map boss, if you twin or duplicate the bosses, you actually have 6 chances at activating that prophecy. So you could potentially activate 6 prophecies and get 6 T16 maps. That's possible. It could happen. So there's definitely a lot of synergies and cool stuff with prophecies, and they're definitely a must-have and a must-be doing. It's like not using sextants at this point. It's insane not to use them and just have tons of them on hand, and it's going to allow you to get tons and tons of T16 maps, obviously, which you can use however you want. Lots of XP, lots of money, they still sell really well, and yeah, it's going to be really good. So you've got a lot to choose from here. Obviously, one Tempest, so one of those. I would probably use all 3 of those. You'd probably use the Dreamer's Dream at all times. You'd use it Master. So what's that? That's 6 right there. You won't be using those unless you're basing your strategy around it. So you could mix and match probably with these ones here. Use some of the additional monster ones, some of the like unique effects ones. Bountiful Traps might be a bit expensive at the moment, so you could use some of the other ones. You can mix and match to get that 7 number, and you can be looking pretty damn good for that sustain. So that's going to be the video, guys. Next video, I'm going to show you how to farm up a lot of these prophecies like by yourself. Just like an infinite supply. All you need is silver coins, and it's going to be a really, really good kind of drop rate. I think the drop rate I was getting for Tempest is around 27 out of every 100 prophecies I rolled, and I got like 22 plagues in that 100 as well. So like half the time I got a good prophecy. So that's going to be coming up. Stay tuned for that, and hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.